Young triplets vanished in 1981, 30 years later. Their mom makes a shocking discovery. The photograph changed everything. It lay before Evie Marlowe, with the weight of 30 years draped over it, faded green overalls with yellow straps, long sleeves identical to what her boys wore that morning. 30 years ago, tiny sparks of recognition ignited a mother's heart as she pressed her finger to the fabric in the image. Something in that pattern, that shade, pulled her back through time. Evie sat in the modest living room of her Texas home windows, open to the afternoon heat that bled across the dusty landscape. The whir of a ceiling fan stirred stale air as her husband Walter cleared his throat behind her. Their eyes locked. He nodded. She swallowed hard. She remembered 1981, the dry heat of low-slung Texas skies, the small town that stretched toward Mexico, a landscape of adobe and tamarisk trees, where Mexican-American neighbors spoke in slow Spanish, and children's laughter drifted across chain-link fences. The Marlowes, a tight-knit family, watched their boys play outside their modest stucco home. It was dangerous freedom, no phones, no internet, simple trust. Evie closed her eyes and felt time stretch. She remembered the day of the disappearance, June 12, 1981. The boys, Lucas, Noah, Gabriel, shining against the sun, green overalls as bright as hope. They chased lizards across cracked sidewalks while their mother prepared lunch. That photo, taken an hour before they vanished, kept haunting her. Now, 30 years later, she clutched another clue. That photograph had been sealed in a dusty album in the attic, untouched since they came home with empty arms. She felt the tremor in her hands even now. She knew Walter would help. He fetched a tray of tea, his gestures patient as always. Evie's mind replayed the details. A young boy in a green-orange plaid overalls, no green check, same pattern. But this child was 8, not 6. He arrived at a neighbor's barbecue. Evie blinked twice, a modern version of what they lost. Panic, memory, intuition. The threads tangled between them. She whispered, "Walter, do you see?" His nod confirmed her fear. The photograph was not mistaken. She forced herself to focus. The neighbor welcomed strangers. It was a desert of kindness. Yet the boy's outfit stirred her. The brand, the color details mattered. She had nearly touched the boy's sleeve before the father intervened. The present world pressed on cell phones, traffic demands, but Evie's world had stopped in 1981, and now it began again. She realized the child could not be one of hers. He wore the same pattern, by coincidence or something darker. She remembered their trip to the attic, Walter climbing creaky stairs, unearthing the dusty cardboard box of memories. Toys, stuffed bears, schoolwork, the photo album. Slowly they turned the pages, reliving laughter that hadn't aged. Then that picture, triplets grinning in front of their home. The green check overalls glowed in the morning light. The straps looked worn by time. The same cars in the background, the same fence, the same small-town adobe home. Evie clutched the photograph again. "Walter, look," she said. Through tears, she described the Cadillac, a deep red, parked across the street. Their neighbor, Mr. Howard Fielding. He had owned one of those trendy Cadillacs, a pride piece in that dusty town. Howard Fielding, beloved fourth-grade teacher. Mexican-American heritage, gentle smile. Slide projector and geography lessons. Loved by children. Known for raising funds. Then he left town. The farewell party still echoed in neighborhood lore. He's going to California, they said. But what if he didn't? Evie cleared her throat. The past and present collided. Misplaced grief returned as hope. The boy she saw was not her son, but a warning. She refused to ignore it. She studied the album again. It was the morning they disappeared, Walter confirmed. Development date printed on envelope, June 14th. Still fresh, no doubt. She closed the album. Carefully she retrieved the photograph, put it in her purse. Walter held her hand. "We need answers." Evie rose and walked to the window overlooking the dry yard. Mesquite trees speckled the horizon. Ranchos to the west, occasional Spanish murmurs floating on the wind. Somehow the memory came back, the velvet ribbon of adobe roads, marigolds lining porches, kids calling mama in play. She breathed. The photograph was the thread. She felt fear and stubborn determination entwined. 30 years later, she would ask the questions she had never stopped asking. This time, the answers might come. Her eyes tracked Walter's reflection in the window. He reached behind him and touched the frame of that box of memories. Then he nodded again. She spoke with conviction. "We're going back to Howard's place." And so began the unraveling of a 30-year-old mystery, traveling from a Texas backyard to a dusty charity farm, crossing bloodlines, broken trust, and the trove of truth waiting to be reclaimed. Evie Marlowe walked back into the storm, willing to face whatever she would find. The road stretched endlessly before them, as though it too had aged 30 years with the weight of unanswered questions. Dust danced in the air, shimmering beneath the afternoon sun. Evie Marlowe sat beside Walter in the car, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Between them on the dashboard, the photograph lay protected in a thin plastic sleeve. The Cadillac, the boys, the truth, maybe all of it waited ahead. Walter kept his eyes on the road, though Evie could feel his mind churning. It might be nothing, he murmured more to himself than her. "Then we'll know for sure," Evie answered. "I can't keep living like this with what-ifs clawing at me." They reached the medical clinic, by late morning, Walter needing to check in for a routine blood pressure follow-up. Evie waited near the front desk, phone in hand, restless. That's when the text message from Louise Mitchell lit up her screen. "Annual retiree school reunion. Hope to see you and Walter there." Evie blinked. Louise had been with the school board back in 1981. If anyone knew where Howard Fielding had gone after he left teaching, it would be her. With a quick breath, Evie tapped the contact and dialed. "Evie, my word, it's been ages." Louise's voice was warm and surprised. Evie smiled faintly. "It's been too long, Louise. I wanted to ask you something about someone who worked at Oak Ridge Elementary with you, Howard Fielding." Louise hesitated. Howard, of course. Everyone loved him. He didn't stay in the public school system, though. He never filed transfer papers. Evie frowned. "He said he was moving to teach in another state. That's what he told people," Louise said. "But from what I've heard, he started a private farm for immigrant children somewhere in Texas. It's called Howard's Haven for Hope." Evie wrote the name down quickly. "Do you know where it is?" Louise gave her the town name and a website. "He's been running it for years. It's a non-profit. They teach farming to migrant boys. Seems like good work." Evie ended the call and immediately searched for the website. A home page with a banner showed smiling boys, dark hair, sun-tanned skin. In one photo, an older man, Howard, stood beside them now, with white hair, his features aged but unmistakable. She found an address, no phone number, just an email. Walter returned minutes later, his appointment complete. "All good," he said. "Dr. Matthews is happy." Evie hesitated. "I want to go to Howard's farm." Walter looked at her. "Now, yes. Louise told me he never went to another school. He started a private charity, Howard's Haven for Hope. I checked the address. It's about 90 minutes away." Walter hesitated, then nodded. "Let's go." They drove in silence, the fields of rural Texas rolling past them, small farms giving way to larger plots and irrigation systems. Signs in both Spanish and English dotted the roadside Agua Ganado Dispensa Comunitaria. The gravel road to Howard's Haven branched off from the highway and led through mesquite trees and open pasture. A hand-painted sign marked the entrance. The place was quiet barns, a main house, a field dotted with crops. A young man approached them as they parked. Hispanic, early 20s, with a warm demeanor. "Hello," he said, in lightly accented English. "Can I help you?" "We're old friends of Mr. Fielding," Walter explained. "We sent an email hoping to catch him today." The young man smiled apologetically. "The staff and most of the boys are at the county fair. There's an agricultural event, an auction. Mr. Fielding is there. Evie's heart sank slightly. Can we look around? Walter asked. The young man made a quick phone call, then waved them forward. I'll give you a tour. The place was neat, orderly, almost idyllic. Livestock barns, stables, rows of lettuce and chard. They arrived at a brightly painted barn covered in children's drawings. Inside, a man was setting up materials on tables. He turned and smiled, a bright, wide grin. Curly black hair, light skin. Evie froze. Hi, the man said, approaching. I'm Ferdinand. I coordinate activities here. Evie's heart skipped. That smile, the hair, the voice. You've been here long? Walter asked. Since I was 6, Ferdinand said, proud. Mr. Fielding found me, took me in. Evie stared at him. Do you have any siblings? Ferdinand chuckled. Twins, actually. Diego is with Mr. Fielding today. The third, he works at Mr. Fielding's other property. Evie nodded slowly, eyes wide. She barely heard the rest of the tour. That smile haunted her. The drawings. One in particular, a red Cadillac, drawn with extraordinary detail. Her breath caught. It was Ferdinand's. He took it out this morning, Ferdinand said. Still runs, though he rarely drives it. Evie felt something shift inside her. Back in the car, she clutched Walter's hand. They're triplets, she said. And that Cadillac, it's ours, Walter. That's the same car in the photo. Walter drove fast toward the fairgrounds. The sky was shifting orange. The sun dipped low. They arrived at the county fair and quickly found Howard's Havens booth. There, standing beside a donation box, was Howard Fielding. Older, stooped. White hair now, but still with those same teacher's eyes. He greeted them kindly then, with slow recognition. Evie nodded. Howard, it's been a long time. They spoke carefully, cautiously. Evie pulled out the photograph, showed him the Cadillac. That was the day they disappeared, she said quietly. And that's your car, Howard. Howard stared at the photo. I don't remember, he said slowly. Maybe. I left town before then. But you didn't, Walter said quietly. Howard's eyes narrowed. Excuse me. I need to help the others. He turned away. Evie caught a flash of curly hair at the edge of the booth. Another man, walking fast. She froze. Walter, she whispered. That's him. That's the twin. Walter grabbed her hand. They followed at a distance. The man Diego spoke with Howard urgently. Then they turned and left. A staff member back at the booth told them casually, "Oh, they're triplets. The third one lives at Mr. Howard's private estate." Evie turned to Walter, her voice trembling. Triplets. Walter, they're our boys. Walter's face was pale. We need to go back. And we need to call the police. Evie reached for her phone. Evie's hand shook as she dialed 911. Every second felt heavy. Walter's eyes were fixed on the dusty road as they raced back to the farm ears, attuned to the hum of repeater radios and police cruisers converging nearby. The Texas sky burned orange above mesquite trees. 30 years of devastation, hope, and longing all wound together in that moment. At the gravel driveway, red and blue lights bathed the farmhouse. Uniformed deputies moved with controlled urgency. They've issued warrants, Evie whispered as she spoke to Detective Martinez, who had arrived with backup. We're containing the scene, Martinez said, voice steady. We've blocked the exit. Nobody leaves. Evie felt her heart slam against her ribs. They walked slowly toward the deputies. 3 men, Howard, Ferdinand, and Diego, stood in the yard. Overhead, the scent of hay mixed with the tension. Deputies seized Howard first. His face was taut. He stuttered, kept glancing at his car. Evie pointed at the Cadillac, parked by the barn, cherry red and unmistakably the same from the photograph. Ferdinand and Diego stood close, confusion and recognition warring on their faces. The brothers looked at each other, then at Evie and Walter. Their dark curly hair, their mannerisms, Lucas and Noah and Gabriel. In that cold Texas air time rewound. Detectives guided the men into separate vehicles. Ferdinand paused near Evie, voice trembling. Are you, are you Mom? Evie braced. Yes, I'm your mother. He staggered. Diego's eyes brimmed. There's three of us. Evie took a step forward. The deputy held her back. Later, Martinez said gently. A swarm of personnel moved with methodical intent. Evidence techs searched the Cadillac, pulling out old license plates, checking the glove box. Detectives fanned into the farmhouse and barns. Evie and Walter stood off to the side, hands entwined. Evie felt tears press against her lids, shock relief grief. After 20 minutes, Detective Martinez approached. We confirmed identity, he said softly. The men are your triplets. Evie closed her eyes. 30 years vanished in a breath. She whispered, My babies. Next, the men were led to the police station. Evie and Walter followed, heart pounding with each step. Inside, the interrogation rooms were cold and bright. The Marlows sat across from their sons, now men eyes filled with wonder and fear. Lucas Ferdinand blinked, voice shaking Mom. Dad, I remember nothing before 6. Noah Diego nodded slowly. We only knew what Howard told us. Third brother Marco was found later at the private estate, tearful and disoriented. All three embraced their parents, 3 sons reunited after 30 years. As dawn painted the sky outside, Evie reflected on the nightmare, the abduction, the betrayal, the decades of uncertainty. Now justice would follow. Howard was charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, identity fraud, and more. Investigators unearthed forged documents, falsified birth certificates, even a hidden room where Howard had staged early photo albums of the boys. But at the heart of it was this moment, family restored. Evie brushed her son's hair, traced their faces. 3 faces she hadn't seen since toddlerhood. 3 souls returned. Yet the story wasn't over. There were therapists, reunification programs, legal hearings, and Evie campaigned for stricter vetting of those working with children, never forgetting the trust breached in her quiet Texas town. Through every courtroom testimony, every press conference, Evie's voice stayed steady. Our boys are home. She spoke for families torn apart by tragedy, demanding accountability and vigilance. In the soft morning light, Evie held her sons tight. 30 years of memory loss and longing converged in that embrace. And while the scars would linger, the unbreakable bond was real and present. Evie's days after the reunion blurred into a swirl of emotion, paperwork, therapy sessions, and media contact. The farmhouse felt both familiar and foreign, each creak a reminder of time lost. But her focus was constant healing 3 broken hearts and exposing the betrayal that stole them. Morning light filtered through lace curtains. The triplets, Lucas, Noah, and Gabriel, sat at the kitchen table sharing toast and coffee alongside Evie and Walter. Their faces showed the weight of discovery. Lucas traced the grain of the table, Noah held his mother's hand, and Gabriel stared out the window at the field beyond, where 3 empty swings still stood. Evie's voice was gentle. This is home, she said, and it always will be. Noah nodded, emotion glistening in his eyes. Over the next week, the Marlows moved into a small rented house nearby. It was crowded and awkward, but theirs. Evie filled walls with childhood photos, birthdays, first steps, Christmases long ago. Each memory was a bridge linking past and present. Between therapy and parenting classes, Evie kept an eye on the investigation. Howard's legal team pushed back, claiming benevolent guardianship, but detectives presented damning evidence. Forged birth certificates, stolen IDs, falsified school records, and photo albums showing the boys in staged new families. In the courtroom, Evie testified with unwavering calm. She looked at Howard through steely eyes. You lied to them every day, she said. You stole their childhood, but we found them. Her words echoed through the gallery. Outside, the town was divided. Some still revered Howard for his charity work. Others whispered of broken trust and long-buried evil. But Evie stood firm. She joined other parents campaigning for mandatory background checks and accountability for child-related charities. Her cause became personal and national. Back at home nights were the hardest. Lucas woke, once calling for Mommy. Noah asked about missing years. Gabriel cried in his sleep, tangled in nightmares. Evie sat with them at midnight, stroked their hair, whispering love and reassurance. One evening, Walter brought home a simple cake with 3 candles. They lit it together. The moment held both celebration and sorrow, loss and recovery. Evie watched her sons blow out the flames. "We make new memories now," she said softly. Media returned for a second wave of coverage, this time with a focus on healing. Interviews highlighted the Marlos journey, the importance of truth, and the resilience of family bonds. Evie used each opportunity to advocate, urging listeners, "If you suspect something, speak up. Don't wait." In therapy sessions, an older woman held Evie's hand. "Thank you," she said. "Your story gave me strength to press charges." Evie squeezed back. "It wasn't just me. It was all of us who refused to forget." Meanwhile, the triplets found comfort in each other and in each other's differences. Lucas rediscovered his love for cars. Noah began writing poetry, and Gabriel started training with horses at a therapeutic ranch. Evie watched them bloom, marveling at their distinct personalities. School began again for the first time since their kidnapping. Evie walked them to class on their first day back. Parents clapped. Teachers smiled, masked smiles, hiding heartache and joy combined. Evie stayed until they disappeared into the school, then bent to pick up a fallen ribbon. Tears came unbidden, but she pressed on. Inside the courtroom, Howard's trial moved toward conclusion. Prosecutors laid out a damning timeline: the day he abandoned the Marlos, the years of false identities, and the final unmasking before a packed courtroom. Evie watched, silent but strong. The jury deliberated for only a few hours. Guilty verdict. Howard was led away, stoic yet silent. Reporters asked for Evie's reaction. She simply said justice was overdue but necessary. Back home, Evie lit candles at twilight. Each flame represented a son regained. She prayed for their future, one shaped by honesty and healing, not lies and shadows. Weeks turned to months. The family adapted, learning rituals and rhythms stolen years ago. Evie taught her sons to garden in the backyard, to bake bread, to laugh freely. In their shared kitchen, the scent of cinnamon and home blended, healing every day. One afternoon, the farm across the street donated 3 baby shrubs to their yard, 3 trees to grow with them. Evie planted them, her sons digging each hole. "Like us," she said, "they'll grow strong together." As dusk settled, Evie stood under the small oaks. She felt her sons at her side, their arms around her waist. She whispered, 30 years ago, I never thought I'd feel this whole." They closed their eyes. 3 men and their mother, bound again by blood, by memory, by returning light. Evie awoke early the next morning to the quiet hum of a restored sense of peace. The soft aroma of coffee drifted from the kitchen, where Walter and the triplets, Lucas, Noah, and Gabriel, were already gathered around the table. The air felt warm and hopeful. It was a family breakfast in its simplest, purest form. No one spoke at first. The clink of spoons and mugs filled the kitchen. Finally, Noah cleared his throat. "Mom," he asked gently, "can we visit that art barn again?" "The one where Ferdinand used to work." Evie paused, absorbing the question. Memories flooded back, dusty drawings, echoing footfalls, the uneasy feeling she'd experienced. She nodded, voice firm, yet compassionate. "Yes, sweetheart, we will." They planned the trip carefully. Evie emailed the nonprofit running Howard's Haven for Hope, requesting a meeting with staff and volunteers. She wanted transparency, even if painful. Security and police records were still active. She did not want to draw unnecessary attention or suspicion. The morning they arrived, the farm's gate swung open into a landscape that felt both familiar and foreign. Barns, fields, and trailers stood quiet. Volunteers greeted them with hesitant smiles. Evie recognized the young man Ferdinand amid the crowd, though his expression was controlled. They were led to the activity barn. Evie's eyes adjusted to the dim light and the pictures that covered the walls. Children's folk art lined the room, painted tractors, papier-mâché animals, and another rendering of that red Cadillac. Ferdinand appeared, speaking softly, careful. He wore jeans and a polo shirt grown up. Noah approached him gently. "Ferdinand, do you remember me?" Ferdinand looked surprised, face shifting through confusion, remorse, longing. He nodded slowly. He stepped forward, closer, uncertain. Lucas reached out, and their hands touched. That moment was heavy with forgiveness and history. Evie swallowed, steadying herself. She stepped forward. "Thank you for meeting us," she said. "We came to understand, not to condemn." Ferdinand looked at her, eyes brimming. "I was lost," he whispered. "But seeing you now, it's life I never thought I'd have." In the corner, a staff member offered tea. Evie accepted, and they gathered as a group, the Marlowe's 3 recovered sons, Ferdinand, a few longtime volunteers, and the non-profit director, Maria Sanchez. Maria began gently. "We're undergoing full review. Counseling, safety audits, background checks. This barn is closing until we're sure, until we have survivors' trust." Her voice trembled. Evie appreciated the honesty. Gabriel asked, "What will happen to the farm?" Maria's eyes flicked to Evie. "We're exploring, changing focus, helping families reconcile, not creating more separation." Evie nodded. She understood the nuance. Change was possible, but only with strict oversight. Afterward, Evie and Walter walked the grounds with their sons. The late spring sun warmed the field. The triplets explored barns, raced across open grassy patches, stumbled upon wildflowers. It felt like a second childhood unfolding before her eyes. Evie took Noah aside. She knelt down and whispered, "You told me once you felt safe here. Is that still true?" Noah hesitated, then said quietly, "It's strange, but I feel grounded." She hugged him. "All of us," he added. The family paused by the barn door. Swallows darted overhead. Evie closed her eyes and breathed in the scent of hay, earth, and second chances. She had thought that place held darkness, but now it held healing too. Pain and redemption could coexist. Weeks later, Evie spoke before local leadership. She advocated for new laws requiring thorough background checks for charity workers, better mental health oversight, and clear channels for families to raise alerts. She spoke soft but steady. "We nearly lost them forever, and this must never happen again." On a rainy Tuesday evening, Evie tucked the boys into bed. Gabriel clutched his favorite toy car. Lucas whispered about fixing up Henry Ford's old Model A. Noah asked about writing his own children's book. Evie kissed each forehead. She whispered, "Dream. You're free to dream." Days flowed into months. The farm repurposed a center for child-parent reconciliation. Ferdinand and Diego volunteered side by side with Marlowe family support. Evie watched them together, 3 sets of brothers mending old wounds, forging new bonds. Spring became summer. On a Sunday picnic, they planted a 4th tree beside the 3 saplings. Evie poured water at its roots. "For hope," she said. Lucas smiled. "For family." Walter leaned in. "For new beginnings." One evening, Evie compiled photos spanning decades-old snapshots of childhood, recent shots of shared laughter, precious timelines of adaptation. She started creating a memoir, Lost and Found, chronicling the search, the betrayal, the reunion, and the fragile joy. She aimed it at other parents, so they might find strength and never lose hope. The courtroom win was followed by sentencing. Howard received decades in prison. Fines and restitution were ordered. The nonprofit remained under federal supervision with new leadership installed, and Evie as a consultant. Media attention, once intrusive, receded. Still, Evie made occasional guest appearances on true crime podcasts. She spoke of the cruelty that can lurk behind kind facades, of justice tempered with mercy, of the resilience of children steeped in love. Her voice carried the weight of a survivor, the clarity of a crusader, At home, she baked 3 apple pies, one for each son. On the kitchen counter, she set them out with care. The aromas wove around them like a benediction. They ate together. No words were necessary. Full plates, hearts full. That night, Evie finally typed "The End" on her memoir's final chapter. She leaned back, closed her eyes, and felt 3 warm bodies beside her. This day ordinary. This night miraculous. She whispered, "We are whole." The first light of dawn filtered through the curtains as Evie stirred awake. The house was quiet save for the soft murmur of distant highway traffic. She rose, carefully aware of Lucas, Noah, and Gabriel still sleeping in the room down the hall. Her heart swelled at the memory of the day's laughter, small victories and steady progress their family had made. Downstairs, the kitchen table bore the morning's remnants: 3 half-empty mugs of cocoa, a single plate of buttered toast awaiting breakfast companions. Evie set out fresh mugs and stirred herself a cup of coffee. In the fridge, she found a note from Walter, left early for work, picked up pastries. W. A warm smile crossed her face. At 7:30 a.m., the triplets poured in their eyes, bright with anticipation. Today they would begin middle school. Evie felt a twinge of anxiety mixed with pride. The boys were about to step into a new world together, stronger, infinitely more prepared. Outside, they posed for a quick photo, 3 backpacks slung over shoulders, matching sneakers, proud smiles. Evie kissed their foreheads. "Go show them who you are," she whispered. The school bus arrived, and the boys climbed aboard, waving back at her. Evie stood at the curb as the bus pulled away, exhaling slowly. This moment had once felt impossible. Now it felt like hope made real. Later that afternoon, Evie and Walter met at the nonprofit center. A ribbon cutting was scheduled, marking its formal reopening under new leadership. The sun slanted low through the windows, casting long shadows across the engaged faces in the audience: social workers, local officials, journalists, and a few survivors of childhood trauma. Evie stepped to the podium, voice steady. "Today we reclaim this place, not as a prison of secrets, but a sanctuary of accountability." She paused, gazing over the crowd. "We've built protocols, background checks, trauma-informed care, transparent leadership. Our mission: ensure that children are protected, not exploited." Applause rippled through the room. Ferdinand and Diego stood a few rows back, shoulders squared, expressions reflective. Evie caught their eyes and offered a gentle nod, a shared gesture of recognition. They had made mistakes, but they stood committed to change. When the ribbon was cut, Evie held the scissors longer than needed. She whispered, "For every child who suffered in silence, never again." That evening, the Marlowe household gathered for a family movie night. They watched an old film about homecomings. The boys laughed at the predictable jokes. Evie and Walter shared a glass of wine. It felt ordinary and extraordinary in its simplicity. In the days that followed, Evie returned to her memoir. She interwove narratives: the boy in overalls at the Texas backyard, the unsettling image of the Cadillac, the desperate phone call to the detective, the miracle of reunion in the police station, and the long path toward restitution. She wrote about guilt and forgiveness, resilience, and the power of love undimmed by time or deceit. Evie included chapters for Lucas, Noah, and Gabriel, each in their own voice. A page from Lucas reflected his love of old cars and rebuilding trust. Noah's was introspective, imagining a future as a counselor for other lost children. Gabriel's voice was bold, confident. "I'm going to drive something big someday, but first let me help kids like me." Each son claimed his identity rooted not in captivity, but in family and choice. The manuscript was nearly complete. Evie sent it to her publisher with a note: "I wrote this so no mother ever loses her boys, and so every boy learns that truth can save you even when it's hidden for decades." Months later, the book hit shelves. The crime drama community embraced it. Readers praised its unflinching honesty and cultural authenticity, the vivid evocation of small-town Texas on the Mexican border in 1981, the Marlowe family's tight-knit structure, and the deep emotional impact of separation and redemption. Interviews followed. Evie spoke on podcasts and morning shows and at fundraising galas. She always emphasized three takeaways: trust your instincts, demand accountability, never stop searching. She pressed for legislative reforms, nationwide hosting roundtable discussions with lawmakers, food stamp advocates, child welfare directors, and legal experts. She felt her pain transformed into purpose. Late one evening, Evie received a letter. The envelope was cream-colored, handwritten in precise script. Dear Evie, I never met you as a mother, only as a teacher. But when I became a farmer of children's futures, I knew your boys were always close by. Thank you for forgiveness for giving Ferdinand and Diego a second chance. You restored life and purpose, and in doing so saved us all. With deep respect, Howard Fielding. Evie paused before opening it. Her chest tightened. She looked at the boys' framed photo from reunion day. She held the envelope for a long moment. Then she opened and read. He acknowledged they were dear, that his actions were wrong, and that his writings would support Evie's advocacy. No excuses, only responsibility. The letter ended with, May their futures honor the love only a mother can give. Evie placed the letter inside her memoir, after the final chapter, under the heading Grace. She folded the pages gently. As the last sentence read, some journeys take longer than a lifetime. But with every sunrise we choose to heal. I choose family. Another sunrise came the next morning. Evie awoke to the sound of 3 soft voices at the front door. They ran in one after another, jumping into bed beside her. Mom, they exclaimed. She wrapped them in arms wide enough for all. Their laughter filled the room. In that moment she knew the story wasn't over, it was only just beginning.